Welcome to Highly Sensitive, Happily Married, the podcast that teaches you to not only have an easier marriage as a sensitive woman, but to have one that feels more amazing by the day. Where you'll hear relatable stories, love advice that works, and coaching on how to have a marriage where feeling upset and disconnected is a thing of the past, and where instead a sense of loving connection and even fun and lightness is the norm. I'm Hannah Brooks, highly sensitive person, love expert, and marriage coach, and I'm so happy to be on this journey with you. Hey, my friends. Welcome to episode 202, where we are going to talk about soft and strong, the magic combo for lasting love. But before we dive in, just a quick reminder, if you haven't subscribed to the podcast and you've been enjoying it, please hit subscribe. And once you've hit subscribe and you get those notifications whenever a new podcast episode drops, you're going to want to, every once in a while, every few weeks, double check that you're still receiving downloads. Because especially on Apple Podcasts, they've changed it so that if you're not always listening, if you don't listen to every single episode, they will stop auto-downloading the podcast for you. So you just have to press that little arrow up in the upper right-hand corner if you want to keep getting those episodes downloaded and you want that alert so you can never miss an episode. And also, if you've been enjoying the podcast and you haven't yet left a review or a rating or both, please go do so, particularly on Apple Podcasts. Lastly, if you're listening on Spotify, I highly recommend you switch platforms. Spotify is not a good company, and there's plenty of other wonderful options out there for listening to your podcasts. So make the switch. We really all can play a part in making the world a better place, and that's just one tiny thing you can do right away. Let's dive into today's episode. So if you want to make sure you aren't settling for unfair treatment or letting your partner's hurtful behavior fly or passively just taking your partner's rudeness or being a doormat, or if you want to stand up for yourself and proactively make sure you get the best treatment from your spouse, not just the scraps, or if you've ever wondered if what I share on this podcast lets your spouse get away with too much, this episode is for you. This episode was inspired by an email from a lovely podcast listener who was curious about if my coaching approach was, quote, passive, like it kind of seemed to be to her. And if because I encourage forgiveness and getting to places of emotional peace, if I advocate for women to be more like doormats. She was also curious about what if there was a real grievance? Like, what if your spouse really is rude to you? Do you just take it? These are really important questions, and I'm so glad she asked. Of course, I've gotten similar questions before, and it's actually almost funny because I myself am quite strong and can almost be pushy about making sure I'm treated well in my marriage, and I absolutely work with my clients to do the same. But this question made me realize that perhaps I've not been as clear as I've meant to be about that part of my teachings, or maybe I haven't talked enough about the essential pieces of not being a doormat and absolutely not tolerating mistreatment. I mean, I have talked at length about these things. For example, I have multiple podcast episodes on standing up for yourself and not being a doormat and setting boundaries and not allowing your spouse to control you and advocating strongly for what you want and communicating powerfully in order to get the loving treatment you deserve in your marriage. But I just talk more about the other, more emotionally oriented pieces and everything else I emphasize that are actually less talked about in the relationship and self-help world than they should be. You know, I emphasize these things because it's the pieces that are missing from so much relationship advice and self-help stuff. So although I can totally understand why you might have the impression that the approach I teach with relationships is passive, it is not by any means. The thing is, for a relationship to truly thrive, you need the soft belly and the strong back. So I'm going to be using that as an analogy for this episode. Like, you need both the scaffolding or structure of a house and the coziness and beauty on the inside to make it a home that feels safe and cozy and really nourishes you, right? So when I say soft belly, I mean the inner work to best give and receive love, versus the strong back, which in this case I'm using to mean kind of like the outer work or the actions or the strategies, like specific words and communication strategies and specific actions you take to not take poor treatment and to get better treatment from your spouse. And the soft belly is the work of not following that oh so common and natural instinct of getting defensive or brittle, hard or harsh or shut down in the face of those harder parts of relationship. So the soft belly is the work of shifting emotion from reactive and defensive to leaning into like vulnerability and compassion and understanding and openness and tenderness and presence and receptivity and love, all of which fuel the kind of beautiful marriage you really want. And they are not, by the way, passive or disempowered. Now, I'm going to say more about this in a bit, but the soft belly really isn't weak. Because to be soft like that, you need to develop a strong emotional foundation of inner security and worth and self-worth and patience and courage and persistence and resilience. So there really is a lot to what I'm calling this soft belly piece. So again, you need both that soft belly and a strong back, or that scaffolding, or we could even say action strategies, which I'm going to get to in a moment. So just if I say the word strong back, what I really mean is these action strategies that are really important, like specific actions that are so important for you to take to not tolerate poor treatment and to get the best treatment. But the reason I talk about the strong back piece less is that creating the strong back, or this kind of scaffolding, at least for me and my clients, is a lot simpler than learning how to have and maintain that soft belly, or that sort of strong and cozy interior. So the soft belly part really is more complex, it's more multi-layered, and it's way harder to do when we come wired and conditioned as humans to have a kind of hard belly, metaphorically. When we come wired and conditioned to fight, to harden our hearts, to shut down and protect our hearts, or to wage cold wars or hot wars with our spouses. We humans simply struggle with the soft belly part so much more. So I teach and emphasize that part so much more. But the strong back piece is essential too. And so today I want to talk about it more and clarify what some of the pieces are specifically that will make sure to actively teach your spouse to treat you well, and definitely not to treat you poorly. In other words, there's plenty you can do to not tolerate mistreatment and not be a doormat who passively lets your spouse treat you carelessly. Because that, of course, is the farthest thing from what I want for you. And what I teach was never, ever meant to let that happen. And it actually does not let that happen if, as I always guide my clients to do, you're doing both legs of this work. The strong back piece, again, those actions that leave no room for mistreatment, and the soft belly piece, which again is the emotional work that generates love, respect, connection, and super supportiveness and adoration between you and your partner. So here's my sort of fuller answer to the question about whether this work is passive or not. And I want to, again, thank the woman who asked this question, because I'm sure her question is helping many people. So thank you for asking this question. So if you felt unfairly treated in your relationship, or if something your partner did hurt you or angered you or keeps hurting and angering you, like if he keeps speaking rudely to you, for example, you do 100% want to actively, outwardly address it. I have never ever taught anyone to just get over it and not say anything or do anything. And if that's what you understood my teachings to mean, that was just a big misunderstanding, one we're going to clear up right now. So you absolutely do want to address wrongdoings or things that you don't like that are happening in your relationship. You just want to be able to say those things and ask for the things to be different, and specifically how you want them to be different in the most effective ways so that your spouse is most likely to hear you and want to do better. And that is not done when you are reactive and accusatory and letting your aggressive anger out at your partner. That's actually not strength. It's a disempowered and victim-y lashing out, which almost always makes things worse, not better. And as I say that, I'm envisioning our president and his whole administration, like the reactive, accusatory, aggressive anger, acting out like almost like a little kid who really doesn't know how to effectively work with people. That is not strength. It's weakness dressing up as power, but it doesn't work. It doesn't garner respect. It doesn't garner loving treatment. So that was just like a very obvious example that's on the public stage right now. But I do think it's a really easy mistake to make, to feel like getting all aggressively angry is power, is strength. But in an intimate relationship, it doesn't work. It doesn't mean there's no place for anger. Of course there is. But there's a difference between healthy anger and like channeled anger and just like this aggressive, reactive stuff that we by accident fall into when we really haven't developed some emotional skills. So the deep focus on shifting your emotional and energetic states is really so important. So you can not only feel good in yourself and strong and empowered and centered and confident and secure, no matter what your spouse has said or done, but also so you can do what you need to do for the very best outcome and to get the best treatment from him. And as an important piece of this, so you can also discern when it is time to address something he's done or hasn't done, or if it's even needs addressing at all, right? Because one of the tendencies we can have as HSPs, and I know this intimately from my own life, from my own habits, is to over-focus on all the little wrongs or the things we don't like our partner doing, which can lead to policing his every move. And policing will not work out well for you in your relationship. I promise. I know from experience and from witnessing this in other people's relationship. So not every little thing that your partner does that you don't like needs addressing. You also need to learn acceptance of humanness and to make peace with your partner's imperfections. Like that's an essential piece of having a healthy, loving relationship. So that is all part of what I call the soft belly piece, really the inner work, your inner work, your emotional work. But of course, you also do need to sometimes take very specific actions, what I'm calling that strong back, that structural back, or just strategies, right? Or just outer work. So when there has been harm done or some other behavior you want to be different, some of the strong back actions that you might want to take are you ready? To talk about it, right? To communicate, including sharing your feelings with ownership and vulnerability, making clear and firm requests for what you want, and strategizing how to not repeat what happened in the future, right? So strategizing, communicating with your partner about these things. But again, this is so important, doing that all effectively, not just reactively. I've made plenty of episodes on communication strategies for this, such as when and how to share a complaint, which is episode 132, and episode 30, which is 2 highly effective ways to ask for and get what you want. And there's also another episode which is top of mind right now. It's 178. It's actually called, Is It Time to Leave Your Marriage? But in this episode, it's a very concrete structure for a conversation you want to have with your partner when you're seriously not sure you want to be in this marriage anymore and you kind of want to give a last opportunity for your partner to step up and start doing certain things or stop doing certain things. So this is a really powerful process. And a little story that just happened the other day, one of my clients had done so much amazing work on herself and really had made so many changes, and things had gotten so much better in her relationship. But there was a couple things after a long while of not working with me that were really not, she just wasn't satisfied, right? Like, she had done so much from her end, and she just wasn't seeing the same amount of effort and love and affection coming from his end. So she was like at the end of her rope, and she reached out to me because it had been a while since we worked together. And she told me she was seriously considering divorce. And in fact, they had been talking about it just that morning. And she was kind of in a reactive moment, right, when she reached out to me. And I just, I encouraged her a little bit and offered her this podcast and was like, just take a listen to this and maybe try to have that conversation, see what comes up. Like 2 hours later, you guys, she emailed me back and she said this: Hannah, thank you so much. Although I listened to this once before, I still had it in my mind that I'd already done everything there. But when I went back and I reread it, she like reread the notes instead of listening to the actual podcast, right? There's a transcript you can always read instead of listen. I realized I had not actually made my request, which was at the heart of it. I was mad at him for not reading my mind. Oops. Once I had your permission to state those requests in a format for a conversation about it, it was a huge weight off and a way forward that I could not see. Already things are better between he and I haven't even had the full conversation with him yet. You are the best. And I talked with her actually later, and she told me how he's totally on board to do the things that she asked. So like that was like such an instant transformation, right? Like things can change so fast when you have the right words and the right sort of strategies. And she really had the underlying foundational stuff. Like she had done a lot of this emotional agency work. She had just been forgetting some of those specific strategies. So that episode 178 can be really helpful as well as a piece of this action, is this strong back, strategic, structural thing that is an absolute essential wing of making your marriage one that you really want it to be. Now, another piece, another strong back action that is key, depending on the issue, and may not have to happen as much in certain relationships, but in some relationships, it's the be-all, end-all strategy, which is to set a clear boundary from now on around a specific issue, meaning not subjecting yourself to a certain kind of treatment in the future. And of course, the exact way that this plays out depends on the people involved and the issue at hand. But an essential episode to listen to on this is episode 51, Relationship Boundary Basics. So setting that kind of boundary and communicating in very specific ways are two of the things that you can do to kind of have this really good, strong back piece. This very actionable, structural kind of piece in your relationship. But there are other things too that will make sure you're not a victim of bad treatment and really ensure that you will get really good treatment and the love and connection you want in your marriage. Things like routines and scheduling specific activities and such. With clients, I will always help them find just the right approaches and activities for their marriage. But importantly, really please hear this. You can do all of those things, right? Setting boundaries, communicating effectively, and like strategically for what you want and what you don't want. You can do all of that without taking anything that happens on your partner's end personally, and with a lot less or no hurt, anger, and suffering than many women tend to feel. Right? We can do all of this, in other words, from a place of emotional empowerment and centeredness and even love. And in fact, that's really, really essential so that these things create an even deeper connection and respect and sense of supportiveness between you, instead of just creating distance or cold functionality. Right? You might be able to set boundaries and have and communicate, but communicate for what you want and for what you don't want, but without this balance of the soft belly piece, you risk creating distance or, again, just this cold functionality, like living side by side but not connecting, living side by side as roommates or business partners. So both are so important. And the truth is, some women need more support to have that soft belly, to feel calm and clear enough to communicate less reactively, because that's going to get through to their partner way better and best allow them to learn how to treat you well. And other people need more support to stand up for themselves more, to set strong boundaries, to be very firm in their communications and speak up for what they want and what they will not tolerate, etc. So what I coach my clients on really depends on the client and their unique spouse and the patterns and dynamics between them. But it's almost always, it actually is always a combination of all of the above, right? Both the soft belly and strong back. Ultimately, it matters hugely to me that you are treated very well by your partner. In fact, that is my main objective as a coach, to help you not just feel great inside of yourself, but to be treated like the amazingly lovable person you are, to be cherished, to be treasured. That's why I call my program Treasured. And my clients absolutely do see their partner loving and treating them so much better because of this work, because of both wings of this work. But even though the strong back part of this is important, it's totally important, not only is it key to balance it with a soft belly, but you really must be somewhat advanced emotionally in this realm of the soft belly in order to even use the strong back piece as well, right? Just to keep reiterating this piece, you have to be rooted in security, in a deep valuing of yourself. You must know how to comfort yourself and guide yourself back to open-heartedness. When the urge to shut your heart down is strong, you must be able to come back to centeredness when the urge to freak out is strong. You must be able to remember love when it's so easy to forget it. If you want to enact the strong back actions in a way that truly works and really makes your relationship so loving and good and beautiful. Like, you can't set a boundary from a screw you attitude and expect it to work to create more love and intimacy. But that's exactly what a boundary will do when you do it from a soft belly place, right? It will create that love and intimacy, more of it. Right? Like sometimes one of the earliest articles I wrote about boundaries was you need strong walls. You need strong walls to have strong love, but they're walls that are loving. So that's kind of a weird metaphor, but right? You have to be able to set boundaries from a place of love in order for them to create more intimacy and love and connection, which they will do when you set it from there, from love, from this soft belly and an open heart. And this is kind of where my metaphor falls apart a little bit. Like, it's been a little bit of a messy metaphor this whole time, right? The soft belly, strong back thing. But it falls apart even more here because it actually takes a lot of strength to have a soft belly. So we should really call it strong back, soft and strong belly. Or we could just say strategic back and emotionally intelligent belly, right? That might be the more apt analogy here. So I do want to end or kind of wrap this up by extra emphasizing that this emotional intelligence piece, this strong and soft belly, it is strength that you build like you would a muscle. Like, you don't necessarily come born with the ability to be so emotionally intelligent and like with this strong and soft belly, right? You have to build it like you would a muscle. You build it with skills, emotional agency skills. One simple step layered on to the next, or at least that's how I teach my clients and guide my clients to develop this incredible, beautiful, strong, soft belly muscle. And the same is true with the strong back strategies, but they're like really just straightforward and so easy in comparison, especially once you have the soft, strong belly pieces, that emotional agency in place. Right? It's like the strategies, the setting the boundaries, the communicating, and the other little pieces of the actions are just so much easier when you already have this incredible emotional agency foundation. So that's why I emphasize it so much, and I spend so much more time and energy teaching that to you guys, and certainly coaching my clients in that. So what I teach is very far from passivity. It's honestly what leads to the most relationship empowerment ever. And that's why, like, when you hear my clients' testimonials or their podcast episodes, you hear them talking about how coaching with me, even if they tried many other approaches and counseling and stuff, coaching with me was the thing that actually finally worked. Because I think so many other approaches like counselors and books and stuff, they teach you, oh, say this thing or set this boundary or do this action, do this strong back strategy. And it just falls flat when you don't have the full force of the emotional agency behind it. The true deep resource of the ability to have that soft belly, that open heart, that deep emotional resilience. So yeah, my approach is the most relationally empowered approach I've ever heard of. And coaching with me directly is very much the best way to make sure your spouse actively treats you way better than ever. So if you want to feel the magic of that, come coach with me. To get started and really feel out fully if this is the right step for you, you'll just fill out my great mutual fit form, which takes maybe 10 minutes. And in it, you'll be able to let me know if you want to have a chat and ask me questions, or if you just want to have any small questions that we can just shoot back and forth over email. I'm happy to really talk with you and work with you to make sure it feels like a real fit. I don't want you doing this if you're not sure you want to do it. So that's why we start with that form, and then we take it from there together and make a really good decision for you. So you can find that form, that link to that form in the show notes. And you can also find it over at the Work With Me tab in my website, which is hspmarriagecoaching.com. And if before you do that, you want to hear a little bit more about how to stand up for yourself and not be a doormat, if that still feels like you're unclear about that, go ahead and dig into episode 174. It's called Unwalkoverable, How Not to Be a Doormat Revisited. And then there's episode 48, which is how to stop your partner from controlling you. That seems to be a thing that's happening if your partner tends to want to control you. And episode 56, which is how to really stand up for yourself in your marriage. Now, all of these emphasize the incredible strength of emotional agency, like this soft belly piece, which again, remember, is really true emotional strength. And it gives, these episodes also give specific tips to absolutely not tolerate mistreatment and also get the best treatment like you deserve from your spouse, as really my entire podcast helps you do. So feel free to dig into those, but remember, nothing is going to help you make the best relationship with your spouse better than coaching directly with me. So come join me. I can't wait to support you. All right, my dears, be oh so well.